Hey YouTube, it's Olympus Reptiles. We're going to continue our business series. Freaking fly. Die. Die! I hate those things. I might have said a bad word. Sorry. Because YouTube doesn't like me saying bad words. But I would appreciate if you'd like and subscribe, even though I say an occasional bad word. And if you ever go to Patreon, which is really fun, I say a lot of bad words because, I just don't care on there. So if you want to hear more of that, come on over and join us in the sewer. Actually, I'm the only one that's in the sewer. Most people are really nice, respectful in there. I'm just the ass. But let's go on to today's topic. And today's topic is places to buy and sell ball pythons. And I'm going to kind of almost rank them for you in a way, but they're not really a ranking. It's like this is the best and this is the worst. They all have their strengths and they all have their weaknesses. I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit with you guys and tell you some of the places I've used, some of the places I haven't used, why or why not, and what I like about some places even if I haven't used them. So let's start with my favorite place to sell ball pythons, right? I'm going to start with my favorite one ever and we'll work our way through there. And my favorite one to sell ball pythons are at shows. I love selling at shows, man. Shows are the bomb. If you haven't gone to one, go to one. I think you'll have a lot of fun, even if you don't buy anything. Just talking to people, looking at snakes, doing all this. It's a fun day, especially if you get yourself to one of the big ones. It's like an event. But even your small local shows, like for us, our small locals would be like, Lincoln, Kansas City, Denver's not that far away. Of course, your big ones are like Tinley Park, which I think is now moved to another town in Chicago. It's Chicago. Arlington, I've never been to that one. And Daytona Beach, which I have been to. And I think Pomona's got a super show that's really big out there too. I haven't made it that way. But, I've been to shows in Kansas City, I've been to shows in Denver, been to shows in like Tinley Park, I've been to shows in Florida, I've been to shows in St. Louis, I've been to shows somewhere else I forget about, and a few other places. Wichita, Kansas has a pretty cool show. I have to mention those guys, right? So here's the thing. Manhattan, Kansas used to have a pretty good show. It did not happen this year. I may be gone. I don't know. It was the only show I ever went to in Manhattan, Kansas that had a keg of beer. Only one. Only one. And we would float that thing because they stuck it too close to my table. But anyway, so a lot of fun. Shows are a lot of fun. Why are they a great place to buy and sell? Let me talk to you first about the buying aspect, and then I will talk to you about the selling aspect as well. And then when we get to Patreon, we'll talk a little bit about some tips on using each one of these to your advantage briefly, because we're going to do a whole video segment on those later. But at the show as a buyer, why is it the best place as a buyer? Well, the pros as a buyer for a show is, one, you've got competition right there in the room, which is great. Competition usually equals opportunity, right? So you got, maybe 40, 50, 60, 150, 200 pound the size of the show breeders competing, which is great. That's awesome for you as a buyer. Two, you can see the actual animal you're going to buy. And you might say, well, I can see a picture online. Well, yeah, but a picture's not the same, man. Look, let me tell you something. Okay? I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to prove my point. A picture's not the same. I want you to look at every little Instagram model you can find. And then if you can find them without the filters, without the makeup, without the haircut, without whatever, they don't look the same, right? They don't. We've all seen that. For those of you who have ever experienced online dating, here's sometimes a picture. Sometimes it matches reality. Cool. Sometimes here's a picture. My God, over here's reality. So pictures are not always a true representation of the animal. As a matter of fact, a good online seller is going to put that animal in the best light. That's his job, right? Not to lie about it. That's a whole different thing if you use a bunch of filters to clean it. But to put it in the best light with the best lighting, all of that, best backgrounds, shit's way over my head. But when you're at a show, you get to see that animal in person. You can see it move, you can look at its eyes, you can check its health, you can do all these things. You can get the sex confirmed like we talked about right there before in front of you. If you're really interested in buying that animal, you can talk to the breeder, you can find out how they produced it, you can find out about the parents possibly. You can find all this information in a 30-second conversation that online, what you get is this picture and a description. Now, yeah, can you contact the person? Sure, it's a big pain in the ass, though. You get what you get. Number two at the show, guess what you're not paying? You ain't paying any shipping, right? So even if the price at the show is $15 higher than the price online, the price at the show is cheaper because you're not paying $55, $60 to ship that animal to you. You're also not stressing it from shipping, although you could argue you are stressing it with the show. So those are the things I like as a buyer at the show. Animal in person, good competition, good communication, those things. What is the problem at the show? Well, I'll tell you the problem at the show. It is a lot more work as a buyer to get yourself up in the morning, go to the show, you have to drive there, that's an expense. A lot of them charge an entry fee of like $5 or $10, that's an expense. You probably have to buy lunch while you're out and about, that's an expense. And then on top of that, even if you're at a show and there's, let's say, 5,000 snakes at this show, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what's available online. You're going to be able to, maybe you're going thinking, man, I really want to get this, I really want a mahogany clown. That's what I got hard for. That's what I'm chasing. I want this mahogany clown. And you go to the show, no mahogany clown. Online, hey, look, mahogany clown. It's easier to find the specific morph online. You're seeing everybody, right? Everybody is participating anyway. So that is an easier way to find things. So at the show, you're limited to what's at the show. That is a fact. You also have the expense of going, the time of going. I can buy a snake while I take a shit if I want to online, right? I can. Just boop, 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 PayPal, done, boom. Oh, time to clean myself up and get out of there. Not going to happen at a show. You got to spend the time to go in there. So that's a negative. You're going to have to invest a lot more time, and the selection is more limited than what it is online. So that's the point of a show. As a seller, what do I like about the show? What do I not like? Man, I like talking to people. I feel like if I can talk to a potential customer, I have an advantage. I feel like if I can share my enthusiasm, just like I do here through a camera, I'm at an advantage when I'm trying to sell snakes. I'm not sitting my ass down there looking at my phone. If you ever find yourself in a chair staring at your phone at a show, you're doing it wrong. You hear me? You're doing it wrong. I don't care what anybody says. You're doing it wrong. I'll argue that all day long. So, I'm up. I'm going to be engaging. I enjoy doing that. I know that I'm going to take these animals here. I'm going to probably sell a good chunk of them. I'm not going to have to deal with shipping, boxing, FedEx, or any of that crap I don't like to deal with. They're all just going to go. It'll be awesome. What's some of the drawbacks? Well, there's equipment. I have to have show displays. I have to have things like that, all of that too. It's a lot more time, man. I got to take a couple days. If I'm going to a one-day show, I will mark all my snakes the morning before I leave. So that way everything's set up. I can just go I don't take them and put them in there the night before. I want to give them heat and water as long as I can. I move them first thing that morning into their tubs for the show, pack up, off we go, right? If it's a 2-day show, even longer, it can be a hotel cost. So there's a lot more expense. I got to buy a table. It's like $125 at a lot of places, or $100. So I'm doing that. I bought tablecloths, I bought all kinds of crap. I have to drag with me. I like to have somebody else with me when I go. So when I'm busy, somebody else can talk and engage too. So there's that aspect. So there's a lot of work with the show. There's more work than me going, click, posted. So there's a lot more work. But the advantages are selling a lot of snakes at once, meeting your customers, engaging with your customers. You can create return customers that way. There's more loyalty when somebody knows you than there is when they've never seen your face. I promise you that. Some things in the world don't change. The world's moving more and more online, and that's not a problem. But, you trust the people you've actually met a little more, if they were good to you, right? Than the person you've never really heard of, that you don't even know if you're talking to the same person. Those things. So, at least in my experience, people my age. Now, maybe some guy who's 15 buying his first snake and he's coming up, his world's different than mine ever was. It may not matter to him, especially growing up with the pandemic. He may be like online, in person. He may prefer the online because he may be scared I'm breathing out pandemic juices or some crap. Hell, I don't know. Anyway, so that's the drawbacks and the advantages as a seller. It's more work, but it's also less stress in a lot of ways, right?
As a seller, when they don't have shows because of COVID.
Oh, Kurt asked, how about as a seller when they don't have shows because of COVID? Yeah, that's a problem too. But I'll be honest, I think that was a perfect storm. I'm going to be very careful in what I say so the YouTube police don't come and ban me. I just don't think we're going to have a lot more pandemics, okay? I think that's a one-time thing. The last time we experienced anything back like this was back in the 1920s. So given it took 90 years between the Spanish flu pandemic, and the COVID-19 pandemic, and yes, there's been some epidemics and there was swine flu, et cetera, but we didn't shut down the world for those. The next time we have one should be about, if my math is good, by law of averages here, we'll be in like it was 2021, so like 2110. And I'm probably not selling snakes in 2110. I'm probably pushing up daisies, so I don't have to worry about it. But yes, that is a problem that can be taken away. It absolutely can. I mean, but I'm not going to worry about that. It's still a viable avenue as of now. If it becomes not an avenue, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So let's talk about online. So, I mean, you got your in-person, you got your online. There's different aspects to online. We're not going to talk about, this isn't just show versus morph market, because there's more places to sell online than just morph market. So let's work our way up. Let's start with Facebook and Craigslist. And the reason I'm going to start there, I know somebody's going, oh my God, you're going to talk about Craigslist. Holy shit. I am going to talk about Craigslist. I am, because it is viable. People do buy snakes on there. When I first came up, Morph Market didn't even exist. So what did we have? Facebook and Craigslist. That's what we had. Have I sold snakes on Craigslist? Yes, I have. Have I bought snakes on Craigslist? Probably. I don't remember. It definitely, so let's look here. When you deal with Craigslist, the nice thing about Craigslist is you're dealing with a local market. You're not going to like have to ship that animal. It's going to be very localized. That's really good. The bad thing is Craigslist kind of has that reputation, right? It's like the seedy underworld of online sales anymore. I don't know who Craig was, but man, that dude probably hung out in a dive bar. That's my guess. So you do have to deal with that. You have to be careful as a buyer to not getting scammed or, robbed. Craigslist has that reputation. So typically when I was dealing with Craigslist, I'll be honest, it would be, me, probably somebody else if somebody wanted to go hang out with me, and probably another little friend who was buried in my waistband. I'll let you just process that one for a few minutes. That's kind of how I do Craigslist. That doesn't matter if I'm buying a snake or if I'm buying a piece of workout equipment that we all know I'm not going to use, or football tickets, or whatever I'm buying on Craigslist. Trust me, if I buy something from you on Craigslist and I don't actually know you in person, me and my little friend are going to be there. And my little friend should be kind of sight unseen. He's never had to be seen at one of those before. And I just kind of guessed the guy who's doing the selling probably has a little friend too. And we're going to get along famously, right? But I also, that's what you do at Craigslist. So anyway, of course, check your local laws, as always, about little friends. Don't violate any local, I'm not telling you to do that. So Craigslist is viable, much smaller market, very localized. It's free to post on. I think Craigslist is not a bad thing if you're brand new to breeding and you're only trying to sell, like you have one clutch and you got 7 babies and you're keeping 2 or 3 of them and you're getting rid of 3 or 4. Sometimes it's easier to do that than to deal with shipping. It's going to be a little slower. You'll move them all out locally between Craigslist and some local Facebook groups, but be careful how you post it. You can get yourself banned. And using those kind of markets, Facebook's a little bit cleaner than Craigslist probably, although I still would take my little friend with me on anything like that. You can sell, you're going to be local, not going to have as much. That's a good way when you're running small. Now, if you're running a setup like this and you're going to do a lot of online sales, which fortunately we don't have to because of our own sales group through Patreon, which kicks ass, then Morph Market's going to be your best bet. Morph Market, people think I'm anti-Morph Market. There's a narrative out there that I am anti-Morph Market, which is kind of funny. I use it all the time, actually. I've bought animals off Morph Market. I've had an account since 2017. So I've just never had to sell on there. I have no problem selling on there. I don't think it's bad to sell on Morph Market. I think Morph Market actually has improved the online sales tenfold from what it was. I could not imagine if I was producing like some of those guys were back in the day, man. And you can go back and look. I think Morph Market was born out of this. They're producing a shit ton of snakes, like thousands, right? And they're selling at shows and they were selling through Facebook. There was auction pages on Facebook and all this kind of stuff. And that was the big way things were sold. And then Facebook said, hammer down on animal sales. And it was the sky is falling on all of this. Some people got a really bright idea, made Morph Market. Boom, there it is. And maybe it was there before and that's kind of what blew it up. Hell, I don't really know the history, so I'm kind of filling in the blank. And we have our very own online area to purchase snakes from. It's also a great tool for pricing. It's a great tool for looking up combos. You want to see what things look like. Be careful. I don't think they check to make sure somebody's listing is correct. That's on the seller, and they're not all correct. Trust me, I found things I'm like, that ain't that. So buyer beware. but that's the same as a show, right? Just because you go to a show and a guy says this is his 4-gene animal, doesn't mean it actually is. Doesn't mean it actually is. And that is one advantage that online does kind of have over on the show. The show, man, you're there a day. If you fall in love with something, you haven't had a chance to do your research on it, maybe you don't have enough time. Here, you got time, right? So that is an advantage for online in a way. But there's no guarantee on it still. But you can buy that, have it shipped to your house, or hold at facility is always better. Pick that up and be done. Nothing bad about Morph Market. The only bad thing I would say with using Morph Market is if you've only got 3 snakes and you're not putting up a whole bunch of stuff and your name's not fairly well known, you are in competition. And I know people don't like to hear that, but you are in competition. And once you've started to establish yourself a little bit, I'm not saying you got to be the world's biggest breeder, Jesus Christ, but once you've established yourself a bit and people know, hey, this is a guy I can trust, there's enough people says, yeah, you can trust, old Jim over here, he's fine, then you'll be okay, right? Then you can get some more done. But when you have 2 or 3 snakes, especially if they're really high end, it's going to be hard. Or if they're really low end, it's going to be hard because you're going to have to usually use a different tactic to get people to buy from you. Because let's be honest. If all things are equal and you're selling a $500 snake, and this is your first snake you've ever posted on Morph Market, okay, and let's say Nerd is selling the same snake for $500, who is somebody going to buy from? It's not a knock on anybody. Who would you buy from? Put yourself into customer's shoes. That's the best way to figure out what's going to happen. They're going to go, I don't know this person at all. This is more of a risk than this. Same money, same animal, taking the less risk, right? So how does this guy beat that? Well, this is priced at $500. This guy's probably pricing a little under, right? That's the way to kind of defeat that. And somebody will then be willing to take that risk because you're saving them 30, 40 bucks. They will. People will take that risk on that. But it's almost better just to do the local thing if you can when you're brand new, I think, unless you have a lot of animals. Then if you have a lot of animals, you're going to be posting, let's say you're going to be posting 15 or 20 for sale. Hey, man, probably time to start looking at using that Morph Market if you don't want to go to shows, honestly. There's also that point where there's that in-between size. If you're only going to have 15 animals you're going to produce to sell all year, if it was me, honest to God, I would probably be using a free Morph Market account to post them, and I'd be using Facebook to post them. I wouldn't worry about a show because I don't really have enough to take and plan on hitting shows hard to sell them. I may go to 1, but then if you sell 7 snakes at 1, you're down to 6. Are you going to sit on all 6 of those snakes till the very next year when you up production just a little bit? Maybe you don't want to. So that's where those online things can go. So advantages to Morph Market for a seller and a buyer. Advantages are everything's at your fingertips. It's quick, it's easy, there's not really a morph you can't find. It's all right there. And at the end here, I'm going to show you the snake I bought off Morph Market a long time ago and kind of tell you my experience using it and how I did it. Because I didn't really do it the way Morph Market says to do it. And you don't have to either. So I would recommend you don't if you're going to spend a lot of money, and I'll tell you why. But it's all right there, easy to access, easy to figure out, right? All of those things. So that's the advantage to Morph Market. As a seller, if you're like Kurt, I can guarantee you, if I told Kurt, you have to be in charge of all sales. So either Kurt, you got to go to shows, you got to stand there, you got to talk to every son of a bitch that walks through, or you got to post all this crap online. Kurt, which one are you doing?
Online.
Kurt's going to do online because Kurt really doesn't like talking to strangers that much. It's not his main wheelhouse. Kurt's great at a lot of things. He'll tell you he doesn't like doing that. Can he do it? Actually, he can. It's not that he can't do it. He can do it. I've seen him do it. He actually does good at it. It took him some practice. He developed that skill, but he still doesn't like to do it. So he would rather post online. So it's also kind of your own personality is going to dictate how you're going to be more successful, right? So the disadvantages of Morph Market, what are they? 1, the competition. You're in competition with everybody all the time, including every big name that's out there while you're still trying to establish yourself. That is there. That's a problem. Number 2, shipping. Man, you got to deal with shipping. You're going to have to ship that animal, whatever you do. You can't just, like you could with a local Facebook group, hey, I'll meet you at Walmart parking lot. You bring your little friend and I'll bring mine and we exchange this for cash, right? That's kind of not going to happen. You're going to it can. There are local people. You can do that actually on there. But there's a good chance your buyer is going to be across the country and you're going to have to get shipping supplies and all of that kind of stuff, which does eat into profits. So there's that. So that is a disadvantage. So there's a couple disadvantages there. Also, I think it's a disadvantage. It's just not as much fun. You know, you're not going to go to the show where you can then sell your snakes, meet a lot of other breeders, meet people who are maybe become friends of yours or you talk to every show. I miss going to shows, man. And you're not going to be able to walk around and see what everybody else is producing and maybe find a project where you're like, oh man, looking at that combo, I never thought about that. You're going to say, well, I can do that on Morph Market. Yeah, but on Morph Market, I have to put in to look for that for the most part, right? Or be searching that gene and run across it. At a show, I can just be walking, look at tables and go, oh, son of a bitch, what is this? Holy crap, I never thought, man, that looks good. Like, so you're going to see everything and you're going to find things that you want to get involved in. So there's that. But those are really the ways to sell. The ways to sell are going to be at a show, right? Through local groups, whether it's Craigslist, Facebook, or any kind of reptile enthusiast group or whatever you find that's a local online group that's more of a regional thing, or a large internet-based sales forum, the best one we have right now being Morph Market. I don't see any reason why it's not going to stay that way. Let me show what I bought when I use Morph Market. Got to find him. Here he is. How are you, buddy? How you doing? So I bought this guy off of Morph Market. And I'll tell you how I did it. Because again, we talk about, one thing I didn't mention, one of the disadvantages of online sales, especially Morph Market or any place you're dealing with shipping, is you open yourself up to scams. You know, you send the money through PayPal. PayPal's not going to guarantee that. Then the animal never shows up. Or, you know, as a seller, you ship the animal, then the guy retracts the payment. I mean, it can be a nightmare, right? So this is what I bought on Morph Market. Now I bought it from Constriction Addiction. This is a Lemon Blast scaleless head. We've used it as a breeder for a lot of things. It's been key to us working on the scaleless project, which guys we're actually getting close to. I don't anticipate full scaleless this season coming up, but I do anticipate it the next season and probably several clutches of it. So we're going to get there. It's being really cool, be really fun, long process, but hey. So how did I do this? Well, what I didn't do is I didn't just look at it online, hit I want that, buy and gone. I'd heard of Constriction Addiction. I didn't know much about them. So when I found this animal, because at the time, this was a much more expensive animal than they are today. I mean, this was still when that was kind of the hot thing and we were laying out in the 4 digits on this animal, right? So we weren't spending a couple $100. We were, like I say, there was another zero on that. And I'm not going to tell you the exact price because I'll be honest, I don't remember it. I just know it was 4 digits. So I researched Constriction Addiction. You know, I looked at their videos talking about scaleless and the things they had, all they'd produced scaleless, making me more comfortable with what I was dealing with. I read all the reviews. I checked some other things out, kind of found out more about them. And then there's a little button on the Morph that says you can contact the breeder. I did that. And I'll be honest, if I contacted a breeder on there and they don't contact me back, that I'm not buying from them. I'm done right there. Done. You know, because then I start to worry about, is this person legit? Now, if it's somebody like BHB or Nerd or Dave Kaufman or somebody we all know, that I wouldn't worry about are they legit or not, right? But anything that it's not that well publicly known, you know, if they don't contact me back when I use that, I'm not going to purchase. I then talked to him about the animal. I think he sent me some additional pictures and things. We went back and forth a little bit. And that told me that with dealing with Constriction Addiction, they were going to care about customer service. They were going to talk to their customers. They were going to make sure everything was good. You know, those sorts of things that I find important that made me feel comfortable pulling the trigger on an animal that was 4 digits, which at the time was even a bigger deal for me than it is today, okay? Because we weren't, I mean, this has been quite a while ago. So you can contact that breeder. You can make that large purchase much more personal and put yourself at ease. I recommend you do that. It's one thing if you're spending $200 and you just don't want to mess with it. But if you're spending significant money, and maybe $200 is, I'm not trying to say $200 is significant money to some people, it absolutely is, then I think you owe it to yourself to take the time to double check on that breeder. Make sure they're the breeder you want to work with. And this animal pulled its head out, so I'll turn it so You can see it maybe. There it is. Nice example of scaleless head. He was able to send me better pictures of that, all over the animal, things like that. The animal came too. Here's a cool thing. You know, like I said, it's always been a little on the angry side. But again, we don't handle these every day. So when it came, one thing I was surprised about, and this is a lesson I learned on Morph Market, this was way bigger than I expected. That's a good surprise, not a bad surprise. Why people make a listing, they list it at 100 grams, that's what it weighs at the time, and then they don't update the weight typically, so it took a while to sell because it was an expensive animal, and it came like, I think, 2.5 times the listed weight, which was great. I was happy about that. As long as it didn't come underweight. Overweight, good. Underweight, bad. But it was great dealing with Daniel. Everything went smooth. So that's how I would recommend buying high-end off Morph Market. Talk to the person. Don't just hit send. You're going to save yourself from possible scams. You're going to make sure you're protecting yourself. And the seller, you're going to make sure the seller's legit and willing to talk to you back. And then we actually did a whole video on our experience back when we bought this guy and how much we appreciated Daniel for selling it to us. Kurt, anything else you would like to add? Or any other ways you can think of to sell animals?
Can you maybe sell animals to your local pet shop?
So Kurt just said, can you sell animals to your local pet shop? That is another way you can sell animals. We've done that a lot of times, especially with like, you know, if we post a list on Patreon, there's some stuff that doesn't sell. It's like pastels and spiders and a lesser here or there, or some simple things like that I don't want to mess with taking to a show. We will take it and we will sell it to our local shop. Now, we own part of that local shop, but it's two separate businesses. So you can, but you need to understand when you do that, you are making a slight deal with the devil. And what I mean by that is if you choose to take, say, 6 animals or 10 animals to your local shop and sell them, you know, if you're thinking, well, I could go to a show and get, let's say this is a $100 animal, right? When you take it to the shop, it's not a $100 animal. That shop has to buy at a wholesale price at a retail price. Retail price is usually higher than a show, but they're not going to pay as much as a show. So you do need to be prepared that for that ease and that simplicity of getting rid of those animals and selling them to that place, you're taking a profit loss. For me, on that kind of stuff, I don't really want to go to a show at this point in my career with an entire rack of pastels, spiders, and lessers. I don't mind having a handful of those on there. Again, I preach varieties of spice of life. And I want to catch those guys who want that entry snake. And then, you know, 6 months later, I want to buy something crazy and they're going to come back to me. I do think there's merit to that. But I don't want my whole rack to be that. So I don't keep a whole lot of those on hand when we make that stuff. If Patreon doesn't buy it, a lot of times it goes to the shop. So yes, you can sell to your local pet shop. Just know you're going to get less money for it. Which, hell, you're putting in less work, right? Less work equals less money every time. Anything else, Kurt?
Nope.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. We're going to slide over to Patreon and tell you some tips and tricks for selling in our favorite areas and buying in our favorite areas. Thanks for watching. See you next time.